So the year before I got clean and sober, I was drinking heavily, I was using coke and meth, and I was injecting steroids. Hello friends, my name is Vas Solo and this is my channel, Why Spirit Matters. This series of videos is about how I became a drug addict and alcoholic. So far I've talked about my childhood, my teenage years, and my early to mid 20s. If you haven't seen those videos, the links for them are in the description. In this video, I'm going to talk about my life from age 26 to 32, which is when I became a cocaine addict. Even though I've only been clean and sober for 3 years, my days of being an addict feel like a distant nightmare. Who was that person, and why did he do the things he did? I'll talk about that and more in this video. It's very hard for normal people to understand why addicts do what they do. In light of the horrible consequences, our behavior seems absurd. The truth is that addicts have no idea themselves. The problem appears to be that we don't react to drugs and alcohol like normal people. It seems that we're powerless over our cravings, and once we get started drinking or using, we can't stop. From age 20 to 26, my main vice was alcohol. I rarely had it during the week, but on the weekends I'd binge. And while it led to some negative consequences, it never took me to a rock bottom. I wasn't thriving, but I wasn't down and out because of my drinking. But when I was 26 and I started doing cocaine every weekend, things quickly spiraled out of control. I did it one weekend, then the next, and then the next, and then I started to get concerned. I could tell I was standing on a slippery slope. But even by that point, it was already too late for me. I started trying to stop, and I couldn't. Weeks grew into months, which turned into a year, and it became clear to me that I had a cocaine habit. But I still didn't consider myself an addict. First of all, I was far too proud, and second of all, I still thought it was a phase that would eventually end. My life was still manageable at this point. Only one person knew about my dirty little secret, my then girlfriend. The two of us did it together at first, but then she started taking breaks while I kept going. When she realized that I was hooked, she started urging me to slow down. I promised her I would and totally mean it, but when the weekend came around, I just couldn't resist the urge. I was always filled with shame, regret, and remorse each time that I let her down. But a few days would pass and I'd go back to work, I'd start hitting the gym, and everything would seem normal again. By Thursday, that weekend was a distant memory. But by the end of the day on Friday, the overpowering urge to use drugs and alcohol returned. And no matter how hard I tried to resist the temptation, it always ended up winning. Not being able to stop drove me crazy. It didn't make sense to me. I was so disciplined in other areas of my life, especially when it came to diet and exercise. But when it came to this, I was powerless. After 3 years of being in this vicious cycle, my girlfriend broke up with me. Understandably so. I became less interested in her and more interested in the drugs. I was already self-absorbed to begin with, but the drugs made it 10 times worse. It was very painful to lose her because I loved her, but I had no one to blame but myself. I think that was the first time that I considered that the reason behind all my problems was me. Before that, I'd always blame my circumstances or other people. When I didn't fit in, it was because people didn't get me. If I was unhappy, it was because the world was a bad place. I was a drug addict and alcoholic because my parents didn't love me enough. But after I lost my girlfriend, I thought, if I'm such a great guy, then why did she break up with me? Maybe I have to look at myself. Maybe I have to change. And so I decided that I was going to stop doing drugs and work on becoming a better person. I started reading spiritual books. I started meditating. I even went to a few 12-step meetings where I came, I sat, I listened to people's stories, but I didn't think that I needed to work the steps. I still didn't believe that I was an addict. That's why after 6 weeks of being clean and sober, I relapsed. This time it wasn't an overpowering urge that led me to pick up drugs. It was a simple yet dangerous thought. I've been clean and sober for 6 weeks. I was right. Everything that happened before was a phase. Somewhere deep down inside, I knew I was about to make a big mistake. But I didn't listen to that voice, and that led to another 3 years of hell. Things were already bad before the relapse. I was missing work here and there. I couldn't save any money. I'd lost a few friends. I even told my mom I was doing coke because I thought being honest with her would somehow help me stop. But after the relapse, things got way worse. I was constantly having to lie to hide what was happening. I was so ashamed of myself that I had trouble looking people in the face when I talked to them. I was starting to look pale, unhealthy. I was becoming depressed. I was full of anxiety. And then I got the bright idea to start injecting steroids because I thought they would make me feel better about myself. So the year before I got clean and sober, I was drinking heavily, I was using coke and meth, and I was injecting steroids. I completely ceased to care about anything or anyone by that point. I felt like I was sinking lower and lower into a deep, dark pit of loneliness and despair, which didn't seem to have a bottom. Each time I hit a new low, which I thought was my rock bottom, I was always wrong. I remember the look of disappointment and disgust I'd get from the girl that I was dating as I take my phone and my drugs and make my way to the bathroom where I'd lock myself in for hours and watch porn. That's how sick and depraved I became. That became my reality. I actually welcomed the idea of dying from an overdose to release me from this nightmare. Thankfully, my rock bottom did come in February of 2017. And I'll talk about that in the next video. But for now, if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like and subscribe button below. And if you want more content, please check out my blog and Instagram. The links for those are in the description. And make sure to check out my next video where I'll talk about hitting rock bottom and my journey to getting clean and sober. But for now, thanks for watching, take care, and I'll see you next time.